everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Christy Cutsforth. You may know me from the Home Cooking Vegan. I do vegan cooking videos. I also do makeup tutorials, makeup reviews, but there's a whole other side of myself that I want to start introducing more on this channel. I have done a couple book reviews before on here, but I would like to make it more regular part of my channel since it's such a huge part of my life. And reading has really brought my husband and I together more, especially over the last couple of years, I would say. So without further ado, this is my husband, Carrie Cutsforth. He's the other half of our partnership in crime, if you will. We've been married for how many years now?
Hello, YouTubers. I'm Carrie, and yeah, it's been 15 years.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. Ups and downs like every marriage, but the thing that really draws us together is our love of nerd culture. So we're talking science fiction, fantasy, video games in particular for you is your really large like special interest. We run the Des Moines Science Fiction and Fantasy Book Club. We just started it a few months back, but it's going really well so far. And this book, I knew it was going to be polarizing. Like people either love it or hate it usually. It gives very visceral reactions in everyone that has read it or I've talked to about the book. So it is not a book for the faint at heart or the squeamish, and I'm going to be including trigger warnings here. I'm not trying to spoil anything, but I do think mental health is always the most important thing on my channel. And so I will be including trigger warnings in any book reviews we do so you can make the best decision for yourself and your own mental health. That being said, my husband and I do not shy away from horror, the darker elements of fiction and fantasy. So we will be covering some of those books on our channel. So just a warning there. We are all adults here. If you're not, you probably shouldn't be watching this channel. We don't make these videos for anyone younger than 15 or 14, I would say, would be the cutoff.
For this book, yeah, unless you're like, a really mature
Yes.
kid, maybe like
Right.
at least 12.
I was reading like The Shining when I was probably 12, so I don't know if I really should have read that book at that point in my life, but
Well,
here
I
we
saw
are.
lots of violent action movies I technically wasn't supposed to see, but I think I'm fine for having seen them.
I remember I wasn't supposed to watch Child's Play. My dad was watching it upstairs. I was like hiding behind the couch, and I know I couldn't go to sleep that night. I was like freaking out the whole night, and I still hate dolls. They give me the heebie-jeebies. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Use your best judgment. We're all adults here. But this book, the reason I chose it for book club, my husband and I chose it, was because we both had a passionate love for it. It stood out in our mind as being a really unique work of science fiction and fantasy. I would say urban science fiction fantasy, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it leans more into fantasy.
But it's set in like a modern
Yeah.
time period.
Yeah, you could call it urban fantasy, although not all of it takes place in even a city environment.
Or even on this plane of existence.
Yeah.
So I would like my husband, he's very good at giving basic summaries. Give me a basic summary of what this book is about. Like what you would find on a book jacket.
Well, I can try.
Do your best. Nobody's expecting you to memorize or be a writer. Just say what you think.
Well, it's about a group of individuals that, through different circumstances, I don't want to give too much away, end up basically as the children of this being who is a god.
They know him as father, but he's not their biological father. He kidnaps them all.
Well, sort of. Their parents, it's complicated. I don't want to...
One of them is his biological son.
Yeah. And he is able to teach them magical abilities. They always say it's not magic, but it's never really explained what it actually is. So I'm just going to use the term magic. And those abilities are taught by them being in charge of part of a library. There's a magical library that kind of exists underneath their home. and they're able to or they each have a certain section of the stacks that belong to them, and they're categorized by what you could consider like different disciplines, like healing,
Languages.
combat, languages, medicine.
You said healing,
Yeah,
yeah.
healing would fall under medicine, but also
War.
math too, and different
Neither of our best subjects, by the way.
math and science stuff too.
Yeah.
It's like all of human knowledge, and Father has been around for a very, very long time. He's written almost every book that is in the library. So it seems like he's been around at least since since humanity has existed, maybe longer.
He is training each individual child to become a leader, essentially, or to maybe step in for him in the future. So he's putting them through trial by fire, literally, in the book with an entity called the Bull.
Well, not an entity. It's
Well,
a object.
I get that. I'm giving it a human characteristic, basically, the Bull, because it feels like such an omnipresent figure, even though it is a literal grill. It feels like a character in the book to me.
Well,
I know it's not actually a person. I get that.
Yeah, it's something used for ritual, but also as an actual grill. And they're not allowed to share knowledge with each other, things they learn.
And if they do, they get punished. And that they do to each other. The siblings also are rivals with each other.
He pits them against each other on purpose to
right.
He's trying to temper one of them into becoming his successor, and he's doing that through these different methods. But that individual, her name is Caroline.
She's the protagonist in the story.
One of them. Yeah, there's kind of two protagonists. You could look. I guess she's the central character, but at some points she kind of switches to an antagonistic role almost, depending on.
Yes, she's not a reliable narrator because a key tenet of the book is that she has to hide her thoughts, her feelings about Father and the other siblings from them, and so she will literally. There's portions of the book where she describes having to put a little emotion into her face or having to hold it back, and she's like having to think about it in like from a third person perspective while she's reacting to other people in the house.
We should mention too that Father can read thoughts.
Yeah,
so that's part of the problem too. He's got some ESP or something.
He's omnipotent. He's everywhere.
Not completely. He's not completely omnipotent, but nearly.
Yeah. Because, he has other duties to attend to, everything like that, but they never know when he's going to show up and what he's going to know about them and what they've been doing. So she and the other siblings can never fully relax and feel comfortable with each other because they're rivals as well.
Yeah.
But would you say that some of the siblings team up in the book and become closer than the other siblings? Like, I know Margaret... was it Martha or Margaret? I always forget. Margaret and David, not the god of war, the sibling who focuses on war, and the sibling that focuses on death, Margaret, they team up and become a couple, essentially, in the book.
Yeah, none of the relationships are what you call healthy.
No.
But some of them do have bonds.
They have the most toxic relationship of all of the pairings in the group, I would say.
Yeah. I'd say that's true.
Because I think they're the most mentally ill of all the siblings.
Margaret has died and been resurrected many times.
And sometimes they leave her to rot in a hole for like weeks at a time.
So she
comes back after that.
Explore the afterlife and then come back.
Yeah.
But that has an incredible toll on not only her physical body, but also on her psyche.
Yeah, she's not able to hold on to her sanity. In a way most of us could do with healthy coping mechanisms. And I would say the sibling that tries to bring some healthiness to their relationships is Jennifer. She's the sibling responsible for healing, and she's also very much a pot smoker. She's that kind of...
No judgment.
No judgment, no. But she has to. That's her healthier coping mechanism, is to be high constantly. And if you were in that situation, I think you might feel the same way. Did you want to talk about any of the other siblings? Michael was probably the one I related to the most.
He's kind of a like a druid almost.
Yeah.
Like
for those that play D&D, which we also do, by the way.
Or if you just are familiar with druids.
Right.
But he's very close to nature and animal spirits.
He can talk to animals.
He can talk to animals, yeah.
He forgets English a lot of the times because he exclusively talks to animals for months at a time.
Yeah, and Carolyn will have to kind of give him an English primer so that they can talk to each other.
But I'd say of all the siblings, she is closest to Michael, but there's a kind of weird friction between them because he at one point has romantic feelings for her and she doesn't feel the same way about him. She views him more as a brother. And so they work through that, but I would say they are the closest, but she still feels differently about him than he feels about her, I would say.
Yeah, probably.
But they're very close. And she actually has someone else in mind for romance in the book. I would say romance is not a very large part of the story, would you say? Not in a typical sense.
It's a factor. There's
of
it. There is love between these two characters, I think.
Yeah, we're mentioning, do you want to say who?
Oh, Steve is the other character. He's kind of almost a co-protagonist in this story because there are times where...
He's a secondary character.
Times where the perspective, or at least the things shift at a certain point in the book. And
to his point of view.
Yeah, but he's...
he's an American.
Well, that's what they call
normal.
All outsiders.
Uh-huh.
But he's working as a plumber, but he has a history of being a burglar.
Is a rogue in D&D, if that makes sense.
Sort of, yeah. Very low-level rogue.
Right.
But he is hired by Carolyn to steal something for her for a great sum of money because she's able to use abilities that she and her siblings have to do things like rob banks. They can...
she uses her abilities with language to hypnotize people, would you say?
It's like a power of suggestion thing, and I think...
Like a really powerful confidence artist.
I can't remember if it was Jennifer or Margaret that actually had the ability. I mean, she probably gets it eventually too, but being able to... it's kind of like having the power of the voice in Dune or something.
Yeah, good call back there.
You can command someone to do something and it becomes all-consuming for them to do it.
That's when I say she's an unreliable narrator, it's because she's always manipulating things behind the scenes as well. She's really good at reading human nature, and I wouldn't say she can predict what people are going to do, but she has an inkling and she knows what people will do if she puts them in certain situations, which is why she brings Steve into the story. We won't give the plot away or anything, but she manipulates Steve to achieve a certain outcome in the book in a kind of hilarious, slapsticky way.
Yeah, like some of it's almost like
it's
she almost
absurd.
overthinks things out sometimes to a point where she wouldn't have had to go quite so far, but
right.
To her credit, things do go mostly the way that she organizes them.
She views life like a giant chessboard, and so she's always thinking like 20 pieces ahead, 20 moves ahead. That's how I would describe Caroline and her strategy in the book. And she's trying to find out the mystery of why their father has gone missing. That is how the book starts, is that their father is nowhere to be found. He can't be found on the plane of death. Like Margaret goes to look for him. They can't find him there. They have no idea where he went. And so the plot of the book centers around that mystery, finding father and finding out what happened.
And they can't go into the library anymore because there's a barrier around it, almost like a spell that if you get too close, you start to become violently ill.
It's like a ward.
Yeah, sort of like a warding spell, but it's like you can start walking towards the spot, but eventually it becomes overwhelming. Either it's pain or sickness, but it keeps you from getting too close.
And that's why they need a human, an American, to help them, because it doesn't affect them the same way as it does the siblings.
Yeah, so that's kind of where Steve comes in, and that's why well, initially she hired him for a different burglary, but then it shifts to that, though. She wants to get his help
She
again.
has her reasons to bring him into the fold, and we won't go into it, but they have a history together. It's a complicated relationship. We'll just put it that way. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Just that he's sort of the everyman in this book, the fish out of water. He gives us the perspective of, the person being introduced to a lot of this craziness that we're seeing in the world in the world building of the library at Mount Char.
Yeah, I would say he's trying to uncover the mystery of Carolyn just as much as she's trying to uncover the mystery of the origins of Father and where Father went, if that makes sense.
Well, kind of. At moments, he vacillates between being curious and being frustrated and fed up with her,
And yeah, wanting to give up, basically.
wanting to just wash his hands of the whole situation and leave.
But he does feel a connection with her, I would say. Whether he wants to or not, he feels drawn to her, and he doesn't always know why.
Yeah, and it does, like, they feel like they have like that
They
is
have
very
chemistry.
apparent. It feels like they have chemistry, even though we're just reading about what they're doing, but it still feels like they do.
Right. So, oh yeah, I was saying, Scott Hawkins in an interview said that his wife helped him beta read the book and told him to not make the romance so heavy-handed, if that makes sense, to leave it more vague or nebulous. And I think that really added to the story. It made it less easy to predict what was going to happen between the two characters.
Well, and the story moves at such a fast pace
does.
that it feels more realistic that they wouldn't necessarily be, totally in the throes of a romantic relationship, because we do move at a pretty quick
When do
pace.
they have time, honestly, to have a romantic evening? They go on a date to a taco bar, I think, or restaurant,
Well, but
technically.
that's just so she can explain some stuff to him, but
That's the closest they get to a date in the book, I would say.
Well, yeah, there's so many absurd things happening in their lives too that they don't. Well, for Steve anyway, that he doesn't really have time for that much romantic interaction.
It's a country-spanning epic involving the president of the United States at some points, honestly.
Multiple presidents.
Multiple presidents. We won't explain why that is. You'll have to read to find out. But it is an epic, and it has been compared a lot to American Gods by Neil Gaiman. We read that a long time ago. But would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think if you like American Gods, you're very likely to enjoy this book too, to enjoy Library at Mount Char, and we're aware of Neil Gaiman
aware
and what he's done, and I think it's despicable.
I'm going to be doing a separate video on my thoughts about that, so stay tuned and subscribe to my channel if you would like to hear my thoughts about that situation. But continue.
That said, American Gods is still a great book.
It is.
And it doesn't take away from the fact that The Sandman is also
We
great.
couldn't read H.P. Lovecraft if we evaluated him as a person, right? We all know he's racist and just an asshole, essentially. So, yeah. But was he a genius? Yes. He still was a genius.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
With both individuals, but...
We think life is more nuanced. I don't believe in cancel culture necessarily. I think it's good to have context and understand the background of the author you're reading. And so a lot of the authors I like to promote and support in my book clubs and on my YouTube, I try to find authors that aren't super problematic. But again, you can't live your life that way. You're not going to be able to enjoy really profound art if you're always analyzing the artist and their behaviors behind the scenes. And he said in a Reddit thread, an AMA, about writing the book that he had read American Gods prior to writing this, and that he's also a huge fan of Stephen King. So if you're fans of those two authors, I would say this is in your wheelhouse for sure.
Yeah, Stephen King is my favorite author. So,
yeah. He is the resident Stephen King expert. So if you ever want us to read and review a Stephen King book, let us know in the comments what you would like us to cover, because I would be down to do that. I would reread some of my favorites from him and do a literary analysis video on that.
I think I've read the majority of his novels, at least.
Would you be willing to reread them for a video?
Yeah, if there's a particular one that
Yeah,
I
let us
want
know
to
in the
do.
comments what you guys would like us to cover. All right, so we wrote some questions, book club questions. So this is the point of the video where there will be spoilers. So I will timestamp and let you know when to start and stop, when the spoilers start and stop, so you can fast forward to our conclusion of the video if you don't want to know what happens in the story. Also, you are welcome to use these questions in your own book club. I would ask that you cite your source and just mention that they come from our channel. Just to promote our channel, that would be amazing, and support what we're doing here. But you feel free to use these questions in any book clubs you want to run where you want to cover this book, because we really couldn't find very many questions. We had to write a lot of our own, and we used an AI generator to come up with a few questions. So I'll let you know which questions were the ones we wrote and which were the ones that AI helped us come up with. So just so you're aware.
And part of the reason we used AI for some of them is because we actually couldn't find too many examples
No,
online, and
not
just
really.
due to time constraints, we needed some
Yeah.
decent questions, and actually it mostly did a good job.
Yeah. So what I plan on doing in the future, I will have more time to write a script out and thoroughly write these questions before we do these videos. But we just did this book club and we really wanted to get the video up for you guys while everything was fresh in our mind. And that's why we're doing it this way. But I don't plan to do that in the future. I plan to write all of our own questions. Or if I find them on a website, I will cite where we got the questions from, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
We believe in citing our sources on this channel.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so I'm going to be asking Carrie the questions that we had in book club. I'll chime in here and there if I have an extra thought, but this just gives you an example of how book clubs are structured and how they run. Would you have any book club tips you would like to share with our audience, things you would recommend from helping me co-host a couple?
Name tags can be really helpful for your first meeting. Also, having some kind of object that you can set at a table that, like,
we use meetup.com for safety reasons and to promote the group.
Yeah, and that's a good tool for at least starting a group. And when I was talking about an object, we just had a little stuffy,
A little owl bear. I'll post a picture in here so you can see our mascot.
But it's helpful to have something that people can see.
Yeah.
Because if you're in a coffee shop or wherever you are,
Yeah.
It can be difficult for people to find you.
Or even if you just have like the book out in the center of the table, that could work as well.
Something, just something
Yeah.
so people
So they can find you.
Can find you.
Yeah, I think what matters the most is making sure everyone is engaged in the conversation, that they feel included. I know that's easier said than done, but if you could find someone that you're friends with, to co-host with you, that helps a lot. I've run them by myself before, but it can be a little overwhelming, especially I'm autistic and I'm already taking in so many sights and sounds. It really helps to have another person to step in or help read the questions. So
Yeah, usually we have like a host and the question reader.
yep, that helps a lot. So if you feel intimidated by starting a book club, I would just recommend asking your best friend, asking your partner if they would help you. Odds are, like, we all want more connection, right? We all want more connection to our spouses, to the community. So asking for help can seem hard, but ultimately we all want to feel needed and wanted. So they might be flattered if you ask for help. Who knows? Worst thing they can say is no, right?
Well, yeah.
But yeah, the first question, and we did write this question. I think I did. You helped me, of course.
Yeah, we worked together on that
Yeah,
one.
we worked together on the questions. Why is violence used in the narrative? It is extreme, almost cartoonish, especially the prison break scene. Would you compare this darkness to the darkness and villainous characters in fairy tales? Which classic fairy tale from the Brothers Grimm reminds you tonally of this urban fairy tale?
So I'm going to start by addressing the first part of the question. I think the reason violence is used in the narrative is to show how extreme the stakes are, how dangerous these characters are. It really creates an othering in a way of of characters like Father or David, who are the most violent characters in the book.
Would you say it gives it like a mythic quality? Like it almost feels like the Odyssey in that way. Like there's extreme violence because of, like you're saying, the stakes are super high, and it's supposed to feel like a hero's journey.
I'd say maybe somewhat, but to me it's even more so like stories from the Greco-Roman and Norse pantheon when it comes to violence. Like oftentimes,
Definitely.
in the past, sometimes if you wanted someone to remember something, you would literally, in the Greco-Roman culture, at least I've heard this, I should back it up.
Don't recommend doing this in real life, folks. We're not condoning this.
I think it was on Dan Carlin's Hardcore History podcast. He had mentioned that they would literally beat it into them. Like they would give you a minor beating to try to get you to remember something, just because they didn't want you to forget. But that level of intensity is present in their household, and it's more than just being hit or something too. There's characters.
All of the siblings probably have CPSD or CPSTD. Sorry, I always say it wrong. Sorry.
But because there's a sibling who can heal almost any injury, and Father can himself too. We're talking about probably like reattaching limbs, regenerating.
She can't heal their mental health, however.
No, but she
tries to help them.
She's trained in psychology, though. Mm-hmm. But she can heal almost any wound. Father can do pretty much whatever he wants. Like, there's one time with Michael, the kind of druid-like kid. I think he's not able to do something, and so Father just blinds him every night for a week until he's able to do it. And it's pretty brutal, but it serves a purpose. The violence isn't just there to shock. It's there to really underscore how different their reality is from ours, at least in my opinion. I think that's what's going on. And then...
and just how huge the stakes are, like Carrie was saying. Like, universally, it's not just for the siblings, but for the entire world, the existence of the world. It's that kind of stakes we're talking about.
Yeah, because essentially, Father is a god. At the end of the day.
Yeah, since we're in the spoilers section, they are competing. He is making them compete to see who will replace him. And so he's putting them through these epic trials to see who can be the strongest leader who will do what it takes to save the world.
Except that since we're past spoilers, he's already picked the one that he wants to win.
Yep.
And is organizing it so that she...
Caroline
has...
or Carolyn, sorry.
Carolyn, has... is exposed to things like information from other stacks, like things she's not supposed to have.
Right.
She still has to take risks to do all this stuff, so he's still testing her.
Mm-hmm.
But he is like kind of leaving some breadcrumbs to lead her to have a chance at usurping him, ultimately.
Right. And I think that is, to me, the most interesting part of the book is how the ways she finds cracks, in the current game, or like she finds little areas of weakness to exploit that nobody else thought of to win the game.
Yeah, and back to the question, to the...
like which fairy tale does it remind you of? Or it doesn't have to be a fairy tale.
Yeah, I guess, like I was saying, more the Greco-Roman and Norse pantheon stuff, like a lot of the violence between the deities.
But that the violence is used to tell a moral lesson, or teach a moral lesson.
It did remind me, it made me think of the Cinderella, like the level of violence. And actually, when I was a kid, this made me queasy when the step... sisters would cut off their toes or parts of their heel.
That's not the Disney version. The original version did have the mutilating of feet involved.
Yeah, in a pretty bloody, awful manner.
Yeah, and the blood was like pooling in the shoe. I think I remember reading that and thinking it was really gross as a kid.
It seems almost kind of quaint to me now that bothered me after what I read in this book.
We're all kind of desensitized in our current culture to violence, I would assume.
Yeah, and all the action movies and anime and things and video games that have way more violent stuff than that. Mm-hmm. But, do you want to move on to... Should we go to the next question?
Sure. All right, forbidden knowledge. Does this remind you of the Garden of Eden and how the Christian God restricted the amount of knowledge humans were allowed to possess. How does this compare to the way Father divides his children into different specialties, and why do you think he forbids them from sharing their knowledge with each other?
Well, it is similar in that, I guess the biggest difference is we're actually passing the knowledge on instead of just saying, hey, this is forbidden, don't touch. But, like with the apple. They are still forbidden from learning each other's disciplines, although, like we'd mentioned before, he is sort of subtly encouraging Carolyn to do that.
Do you want to tell them how she ends up doing it?
Well, Father leaves like a bookmark with some information from, I think, the combat catalog from David's catalog in one of her books, and it's got some useful information in there. And I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was something that got her started on her plan, and then she started, or it let her become invisible. That's what it was. So she could actually go to other people's stacks and get their books and learn.
Yeah, that was some D&D stuff right there.
Yeah, so she just, but the invisibility spell has actually puts a little science in there, because if you're invisible,
this is our cat Cloud, by the way.
yeah, if you were
him.
invisible, your eyeballs wouldn't be able to pick up light, so you're functionally blind when you're invisible using this magic. But she's going to, at least the library itself, she's pretty familiar with the layout, so she's able to get around still.
But why do you think he forbids them to share knowledge? Why do you think he does that?
Partly to keep his control over them, but also to challenge Carolyn, to make it so that she has to work for it, because he wants whoever to...
He's testing her cunning.
Yeah, whoever takes his place has to be incredibly capable. They have to be godlike in their ability. Yeah,
able to lie.
But also capable still of compassion and empathy.
He really wanted his biological son, who ends up being David, we find out later, to be his replacement. But every time he tried to have him fill that role, he wasn't mentally strong enough to do it.
Or Carolyn was so strong and so capable that he couldn't defeat her. He called her the monster in these scenarios. I guess I should clarify that these are potential, or these are like different timelines, potential events, because he goes back and erases that and kind of starts over, and he does it 9 times.
Isn't there a sibling who gave birth to children and then killed the children and used them to tell the future or something like that?
Prescience.
This book is wild, you guys. It's wild.
I can't remember her name.
I've never read another book like this book, hence the reason we're covering it. It's so unique.
Well, she has these ghost children that most people can't see, but the other librarians can.
I think Steve can too, can't he?
Well, he was resurrected. Which in this reality, being resurrected gives you
the ability.
Some magical abilities, or not so much abilities, but you can perceive things you couldn't normally.
That's an important point to note. Who killed Steve?
Carolyn did. But she always intended on resurrecting him, though.
But that's why I'm saying, when I say their relationship is complicated and romance is not necessarily the central tenet of this story, that's what I'm talking about. Their relationship is trust is not there.
Yeah, she needs him to have those abilities, so he had to die and be resurrected for that to be possible. Animals
in this book feel more honest and less manipulative than humans. Dresden put more thought and care into the way he killed Marcus and, I cannot say this, Elaine.
Dresden is a lion who is taken captive by, I can't remember the name of this guy, but he's supposed to be like a...
Marcus. He's a rapper.
Yeah, or hip-hop mogul. And he has these 2 lions as pets, basically just for status and to impress women that would come over to his house.
Yeah, he keeps bringing up Scarface whenever his girlfriend asks why he has these lions. And he's like, Scarface.
Yeah, and also his guns and drugs and the rest of his massive fortune. but he
He views them as
tranquilized,
possessions, not as animals.
like went hunting, but with tranquilizers to capture these lions with like a party of people. I mean, it wasn't just him. He had a bunch of guys that were helping him.
Right. Can I finish the question?
Oh, I was just going to say one more thing about Dresden. They free Dresden and his daughter Naga, and so they're kind of indebted to Caroline and her siblings, who they're called the Polapi. That's what Caroline and her group are known
And they
as.
have their own language called Polapi.
And so Dresden is this helpful lion that works with them.
Yeah. So yeah, like when I say this book is unique, the rules of nature don't apply in this book. Animals can talk with the special abilities like Michael has.
Well, in their animal language.
Yes, and so they can interpret and understand their motivations in the book, which is interesting, I find. But yeah, the juxtaposition between the way Dresden the lion approaches violence versus the way the humans in the book approach violence, how would you say they compare?
Let's say Dresden and the other animals, they're not trying to manipulate or do all this scheming so much to try to achieve different results for politics and all this. They have a much simpler outlook on existence. There's still violence. There's still quite a bit of violence, and Dresden, for instance, can choose whether or not. Well, all lions apparently can do this. They can choose whether or not to make their victims suffer by biting them a certain way, or to make them feel no pain. Mm-hmm. And he makes the hip hop mogul guy, like, he makes his girlfriend feel no pain when he kills her because
He was very merciful.
I mean, he could have not killed her, but he's still a lion, I guess.
Yeah, he's a lion. He's written as a lion. And then in that situation, he would do that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because he's part of the food chain.
But then he makes Marcus feel incredible agonizing pain that's going to make it impossible for him to pass on to the afterlife.
Yeah.
So his soul will just
pretty metal.
wander like the plane of agony for all existence or something like that.
Yeah. Comparing that to the way David is violent, how would you say that compares?
Well, David seems to really just enjoy it. Like, for him, it's like entertainment.
Yes, definitely.
And he does do violence with purpose too, but
not always.
And he doesn't need to go as far as he goes most of the time
to achieve the desired result. Yeah.
Yeah, he could be much more. He could be quicker and more merciful, but he's not.
Caroline and her siblings have a lack of humanity. You can see it in the way others are expendable or disposable to them. Do you think this is solely caused by father's cruelty, or does the isolation of being what amounts to a god cause this inherently?
Yeah, this has to do with how the Polapi are kind of operating on a different plane from the rest of us. They don't see reality in the way that we do, since they have these incredible abilities. They sometimes have trouble understanding what life is like for normal, mortal human beings. Yeah, so they see people in general as expendable or disposable. Same with many animals, like Carolyn at one point thinks Dresden and his daughter Naga are expendable, despite them saving Steve's life at a really intense part of the book, where he's being chased by this horde of dogs. Like over 100 dogs are probably trying to kill him.
Oh yeah, I was going to say this is included in the trigger warning, but there is animal death in this book, so
Lots
just
of animal death.
Be aware of that. But again, like I said, this is like cartoonish, over the top violence, and I would say the dogs I didn't feel as strongly connected to as Dresden when Dresden dies in the book. That was a hard part for me, but
that made me sad.
I'm just warning you that does happen in the book. Just FYI.
Yeah, I guess most of it is dog deaths,
and you don't really get to know the dogs.
Which is rough.
Yeah, it sucks, but like I said, if you take it from a cartoonish, over the top standpoint, it fits the tone of the rest of the book. It doesn't feel like it's just thrown in there to be like a manipulative cry for emotion. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very surreal and
Yes, that's
disturbing.
exactly it. Surreal. For sure.
When it comes to them being on this other plane, that's something that they struggle with, like Father and Carolyn, like trying to relate to humanity again. And that's going to be a central theme of kind of the latter part of the book,
Yeah.
is getting her to unfreeze, to get her to thaw her emotions, to actually like connect to them again,
Right.
and to connect to people and realize that individual lives matter.
Steve was her one main tie to keeping her humanity. And since we're in the spoiler section of the discussion, when he dies and becomes resurrected as the sun, literal sun, you guys,
Well,
she definitely loses more of her touch with humanity. Okay, when I say die, I mean he's not a human anymore. That's what I mean. The Steve she knows is gone.
kind of.
That's what I'm trying to say.
I think he still consciously exists, but he's just the sun, and
We'll
he's
have to agree to disagree
connected.
and have a different perspective, and that's okay.
Well, and he makes. They need someone that has a connection to the plane of joy, and he does. So that's what makes the sun actually bright and vibrant in this reality, because she tries to make another sun out of her evil brother David, and that's a black sun that just gives off very little light.
Talk about the ultimate revenge, right? Because he sexually assaults her in the book, so that's another trigger warning I want to everyone to be aware of. That is a very visceral part of the book, obviously, and very uncomfortable, but she does get probably the best revenge I've ever heard in a story.
I can't imagine doing anything worse to someone.
Do you want to explain what she does?
Well,
As best as you can. I know that it's very nebulous.
Well, that force field we were talking about earlier that makes you feel, well, or barrier, I guess. It's not really a force field. But when you start walking in there and feeling pain, well, David is an incredible fighter. Like under fair circumstances, almost no one could beat him. Father is maybe the only person. And Caroline wouldn't have a chance at beating him. Like, there's just no way she could do it. So what she does is lure him into that area where his mind is just full of pain, like he's having to use all of his techniques to suppress the pain. So his hyper awareness, he has like this crazy perception, kind of like Paul in Dune.
I knew you were going to bring up Dune. I knew it.
Like he can, it's not quite prescience where he can see a lot of like advanced details of events, but he can sense whenever anybody wants to hurt him.
Yeah.
So he can react and
It's
move.
his spidey sense.
You could think of it like if it was a fighting game, like he could somehow read your inputs. He could know what you were going to do. But in order to stop that ability from working, she gets him in there so he can't concentrate. He can only really focus on fighting her and trying to manage his pain. And she has this other person that she's kind of manipulated into the situation named Erwin, who's a very capable soldier. He's part like a government agent now, I think like a U.S. Marshal maybe. But he fought in a bunch of different wars and conflicts and things, and is an incredible warrior, but just not up to David's level. But he's able to...
He doesn't have like supernatural powers.
But he's able to snipe him from behind when he's distracted, and he doesn't quite kill him instantly. He blows off half of his head, maybe not quite half, exposing his brain.
Yeah.
And Carolyn then casts a spell on him. I mean, she wouldn't call it a spell, but it freezes him and separates him from time, like I was saying earlier, so that he is still alive. He can't die because he's frozen. And then she gets some static electricity on her hands, like rubs them together or against a shirt or something, and like zaps a part of his exposed brain, which is like the pain center of the brain. And so he's frozen and in like the most agonizing pain that you could imagine, except that he can't die, so it just keeps going and going forever.
Yeah, pretty metal, pretty brutal. You did a good job explaining that. Thank you.
And as he's stuck there, he also starts turning into a sun. Like this energy from him being connected to the plane of agony just keeps like this big black cloudy bubble just grows
He's like a
around
black
him.
hole sun, like Soundgarden, the Soundgarden song.
Yeah, and he gives off heat but no light, so photosynthesis is impossible at that
Yeah.
point.
She definitely, while she has all the knowledge of humanity, sometimes she lacks some very basic practicalities, and she thinks humans will just adjust to not having crops. Like she thinks, oh, well, there'll be fungus, there'll be mushrooms, everybody
Mold
will
that
be
we can
fine.
eat. Yeah, but that's not.
Yeah.
We can't produce obviously
No.
enough of that to keep everyone
And not
alive.
in the time frame it would take
Yeah,
to readjust. That's the thing about Caroline or Carolyn, and that's why she needs her tie to humanity, because without it, the world will be destroyed. Humans will die.
and she thinks she's protecting us from these other would-be deities, and that's good. But if everyone dies from not being
What's the
able to
point?
eat, there's not really any point in doing that.
Right. So she does resolve it somewhat by like making manna rain from heaven, bread, I guess. But yeah,
Cloud bread.
basically like what happens in the Bible.
It's bread made from clouds.
Yes. Don't over. Okay, that's my key with this book. Don't overthink it too much. Just go along for the ride. It never lets up. This book, if you have a hard time maintaining your attention span, like if you have ADHD, I would say this book is for you because it never lets up the entire time. Would you agree?
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to keep up with sometimes. At least for me, it was. I'm not speaking for him, but I had trouble.
No, I couldn't put it down. I was just riveted the whole time. Yeah, I didn't really have that much trouble.
I remember I read it. I just couldn't wrap my head around what I read. And so I wanted him to read it, for one, because he would love it. I knew he would. But I also just wanted to have someone to talk to about it, because to me that is the point of a book club. Like sometimes other people will pick up on things you didn't and have a different perspective, and it just makes it makes it more enriching to me.
Well, you've
An
got
enriching experience.
other people to talk about the thing you really like with, so which
Yeah.
can be hard to find sometimes.
Oh my gosh, so much so that I did definitely pressure you to read more because I wanted someone to talk about books with. I was going to say a cute couple-y story I did want to bring up about our mutual love of books. I remember getting you into reading again. Do you remember the series I pushed you to read because you did not think you would like it, but you did?
Oh, it was Harry Potter, I think, because I
He
used to
didn't
read.
grow up when they first came out. Like he wasn't a child.
Well,
I mean, he wasn't a child.
Oh, I was like a teenager.
Yeah, he thought he was too cool for Harry Potter at that point.
Well, yeah, and I had
I'm
kind of
kidding.
fallen off the reading habit. Like I definitely had read when I was, in my teens and 20s,
Yeah.
but I'd kind of fallen off for a bit.
Well,
and-
we went to college and we had to do a lot of reading that we didn't want to do, or we did, but it was also assigned reading. So we didn't have a lot of bandwidth to read a lot of fiction that wasn't on our course load on the syllabus.
Yeah.
So I'm not judging or blaming anybody for that, but I'm saying like when we graduated, I wanted him to get back into reading and make it a lifelong habit. And so I recommended that series because I knew once he got into it, you can't put those books down. Like, right. They're very meaningful to all of us. And again, we all know J.K. Rowling, very, very problematic person, but I do give her credit for getting my husband back into reading as a habit.
Well, and if it wasn't her, it probably would have been something else too.
We would have found something else. I knew there were movies too. So if I could get him into the book,
Well,
he would enjoy the movie afterwards.
it's just a very accessible, easy read, so I could kind of breeze through them, and yeah, I enjoyed it for sure.
Speaking of accessible, easy reads, do you want to tell them what book we're doing for next month's book club and we will be covering on this channel?
Howl's Moving Castle,
By Diana Wynne Jones.
which I have only seen the Hayao Miyazaki animated movie version
You
of
got
that.
me to watch that, actually. I never grew up with his movies, and so Carrie exposed me to Hayao Miyazaki movies.
Yeah, and I didn't discover them till my 20s when, I guess I did, or the first one I saw was in high school. I saw Princess Mononoke in high
Gotcha.
school, and then I kind of gradually started collecting them all and watching them.
I grew up in a very small town of like less than about 4,000 people. And so our video store had a very limited selection. I never saw his movies on the shelves. So it wasn't that I wouldn't have been interested. I just didn't know they existed. So thank you for introducing that to me.
Yeah, back in the day, I had to build my collection by going to Best Buy and just picking up DVDs.
Yeah, all of you Gen Z, Gen Alpha people out there, we had to physically collect media, and it was a pain in the butt. So it was not easy.
Yep, I'm not doing that anymore, though.
Yeah. So I'm glad. I want these things to be accessible for the next generation, and I think it's really important. And I do recommend reading the book too. Yes, the movie is amazing, but you get more of the inner dialogue of the characters. Just like with any movie book situation, you're going to get more of the inner dialogue in a book than in a movie. That's just the nature of the media.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, they're both great.
So many voiceover inner monologues, you can't do that constantly. So
well, and it would take away from the effectiveness of the visual media if you're constantly doing that. I get why they do it the way they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, we will be covering the book in depth, and I love her books. I haven't read that many of them, but I also read Dog's Body by her, which I would highly recommend, and I will do a review on that on this channel as well, because I think it's a very, very underrated book. She kind of gets overshadowed by J.K. Rowling, I would say, but she's definitely an amazing fantasy writer you need to go check out. Same with Ursula K. Le Guin.
Yeah, I want to read more of her books at some point too.
Yeah. So I think we definitely don't need to do all these questions. I feel like unless there's anything else you want to add, this video is already going to be fairly long. We don't want people falling asleep. So is there anything else you wanted to add? Again, I will include all of the questions in the down bar. If you want to use them for book club, for your own book club, feel free to do so. But yeah, this is the first of many, hopefully, of these segments. I hope it inspires you to pick up books maybe you wouldn't think to read on your own. That is why we're doing this. Essentially, I want to expose YouTube and the literary community to what I view as cult classics that people should check out.
Yeah, and I think this book in particular qualifies for that. It hasn't gotten, I feel like, the attention that it deserves at all.
Yes, agreed.
I feel like it's a hidden gem, and it should be a massively successful book. There should be like a series, probably like a mini-series or limited series, whatever you want to call it, on one of the streaming platforms. I think it would adapt perfectly into something like that.
We brought that up in our book club discussion. Everyone was talking about how this would really translate to a cinematic interpretation.
Yeah, there's so many cool visuals in here and things that
the talking perfectly. Lion. I mean, I want to see that.
Yeah,
don't you?
There's a talking human head at one point. Yeah, just lots of crazy stuff.
So, if you were going to describe this book in 3 words, what 3 words would you use? I would say for me, grotesque, surreal, and imaginative. Those would be my 3.
For me, probably surreal, fantasy, and violence.
But yeah, we will continue to do these probably one a month for now, because my husband's a very busy person, and again, everyone is busy. I get it. Life is very chaotic, especially in our current society. So yeah, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure to subscribe, leave us a comment, tell us books you would like us to review or cover on this channel, ones you consider lesser known cult classics or gems that more people should be aware of. I get it. We love Dune, but I'm sure there's a million YouTube channels that cover his books. Like, you know what I mean?
Frank Herbert.
Yes, Frank Herbert.
Yeah, and if you have any suggestions, if you've read Library at Mount Char and you read a book that you think
is similar,
we'd like to hear about it too.
Yeah, I hope everyone's staying safe, healthy, and happy, and make sure to make reading a lifetime habit. Talk to you next time. Bye.